BBC Sounds. Music, radio, podcasts.
Hello, and thanks for listening to the Farming Today This Week podcast. I'm Kaz Graham, and in this episode, the bee disease, which can wipe out a hive in days.
Beekeepers feel that their colony was fine one week, but when they go back the next week, they see these mass die-off of bees, and there's a big pile of dead bees there that wasn't there just the week before.
A new approach to rural crime.
Instead of people going to court after a livestock attack, is giving them the ability to go on an awareness course for responsible dog ownership. We've trialled it in Wales, and from September we're going to go UK-wide with it.
And the sun is out, and it's showtime.
The crucial young handlers, more important than the Pig of the Year final, more important than the Supreme Pig in Show. Cracking job.
I genuinely think there's a future for agriculture in this country, of course there is, but we need to make sure that every farmer feels the same way about it.
More from the Great Yorkshire Show in Harrogate a little later on. First, though, mention mussels, and you might well picture a tempting dish of moule frite out in the sun at a pavement cafe in Belgium, glass of crisp white wine on the side for good measure. But those mussels could have come from much chillier origins, the UK's most northerly island. Almost 90% of the mussels produced in Scotland are grown in Shetland. Mussel farmer Michael Tate produces 1,000 tonnes a year on long ropes. His company, Shetland Mussels Limited, employs 17 people to help build the lines, set the moorings and place the young mussels, known as spat, on the lines to grow. They have 24 sites dotted across the islands, and our reporter in Shetland, John Johnson, has been to meet him.
So we're on the shore of Vale Sound, which is an inlet on the west side of Shetland. We've got several mussel sites in this voe, as we call it, or bay.
Let's step down here and look at one of the ropes that you're growing the mussels on.
Here's a sample of the type of shells that we're trying to market. So they're about 55 millimetres, these ones. We'll have started the work on this 2.5, 3 years ago. To farm mussels nowadays, you need the right equipment to get it done efficiently, and we're standing next to one of our boats right now. It's got cranes, it's got these davits which we use to lift the lines up. We have a machine at the front for putting the mussels back in, and we use this boat to do a whole heap of tasks. This is our tractor equivalent.
Is there any special techniques that you use to grow such big mussels?
The mussels here are rope grown, so we have them suspended from floating structures. There's lines in the sea, and if anybody was looking at it from the land, it would look like a field marked out on the water. And down from those lines, we have ropes hanging, and that means that the mussels are no lying on the seabed. They're no in amongst the mud, so they're grit free. One 200 metre long line could have well over 50 tonnes of mussels on it in just one line.
Where is your main market?
We've specialised over the last sort of decade and more in servicing the UK market, so both wholesale and the retail. So we're a member of a cooperative. It's called Scottish Shellfish Marketing Group. It's basically a bunch of us mussel farmers working together to share a resource of a factory in Glasgow to put mussels into the various types of packaging you'd see in retailers.
So it's mostly going to the south of England, not into Europe?
We're increasing the volume that we're selling to Europe. We are a growing industry. This year we've been at our sort of maximum tonnage that we've seen so far, at over 11,000 tonnes for the whole of the Scottish sector. The mussels that go into Europe need to be A grade. For us in Shetland, that's been no really a big issue because our waters are predominantly A grade all year round. There's not many people here. We don't have any sort of big issues with sewage, pollution or water runoff, and so therefore we can do all the paperwork required. There is veterinary certificates and lots of things you have to do, but we have been able to sell to Europe all the way through the last few years.
That's mussel farmer Michael Tate. Well, we've been exploring the UK's shellfish industry on Farming Today throughout this week, including oysters. We've been harvesting native oysters since Roman times, but numbers have declined by 95% since the mid-1800s, mainly due to overfishing and pollution. Pacific oysters are widely farmed and they're more robust, but scientists are now selectively breeding our native oysters to make them more resilient. Nina Pullman reports from the Argyll coast.
This is quite concentrated.
So effectively you're anaesthetising oysters, right? We're on a pontoon, the outskirts of Oban. So why is it so important that they are asleep and not dead?
So we want them to be relaxed, and so they open their shells, and only if their shells are open can we get in to take the biopsy sample without hurting them? So normally if they're awake, they will clamp their valves closed and we can't get in. So we want them to go to sleep so we can very, very gently get in and take a tiny little tissue sample without killing them. And then we'll wake them back up again, they can go back out to sea, hopefully stay completely alive. My name is Vicky Slight and I'm a marine biologist from the University of Aberdeen. I was drawn to shellfish aquaculture partly because my background is completely in mollusk biology, but also it's just such an amazingly sustainable industry and way to make food.
My name's Tom Ashton and I'm an oyster farmer. I've got a background in selective breeding and genetics of farmed aquaculture species, salmon, trout, barramundi, all the fish and shellfish species. And nowadays I'm focusing my energies on becoming the best oyster farmer I can be. I'm farming Pacific oysters in open ocean cages. I'm also working on breeding our native indigenous oyster, which is currently pretty much undomesticated. So looking at using selective breeding to improve traits like growth rate and survivability against diseases. So here we are on a rainy dock in Oban, about to go and anaesthetise some oysters.
So one of the traits that we'd like to learn about is resilience to air exposure. That can be very stressful for an oyster that normally lives under the sea, and so we'd like to find the genetic control of that specific trait.
Why is this important for you, Tom?
During farming, oysters need to spend some time out of the water. This helps keep them clean, it gets all the barnacles and seaweed off them, creating a nice clean product. But also, when you pack them and sell them, they need a shelf life. So the longer the oyster is able just to stay healthy and happy out of the water, the better it is for us as farmers.
So the oyster's been put to sleep, what happens now?
Well, it'll take a few hours for the anaesthetic to work. So we're going to leave them in this bucket. This first experiment is to just check that we can get the DNA out of animals and have them stay alive. But if we can do that, then we can do much larger scale experiments, some on ice to replicate shelf life. We might think about doing some experiments in very hot weathers to try and replicate heat waves and climate change. And we'll measure how the organisms fare under those conditions.
So we've come in from the farm. We're now in Tom's rented apartment kitchen doing the second part of the experiment. Vicky, can you just talk me through what's going to happen here?
We're going to go inside the animal and take a tiny biopsy of tissue. And we're also going to add a tag onto the outside of the shell so we can track which samples we've taken from each oyster. What I'm going to do next is take these back to my laboratory at the University of Aberdeen, where I'll do a DNA extraction from the tissue, and then we'll sequence the DNA, and hopefully we can then start to correlate those sequences to differences in the physiology and understand the genetics that control some of these traits that we're interested in.
Dr. Vicky Slate. The Environment Agency says it's increasing the number of farm inspections in England by 50%. It carries out around 4,000 a year at the moment, but by 2029, the aim is to up that to 6,000 a year. The agency says that agricultural pollution is the main cause of poor water quality, and it wants to work more closely with farmers, offering better guidance to ensure they stick to the rules and avoid pollution. But will it work? Rob Kynaston is a dairy farmer in Shropshire, and he had a routine inspection in January which highlighted some areas that needed improvement. Environment Agency Inspector Karen Price went back to the farm later to check on the work that he's carried out since. Our reporter Rebecca Rooney went along too.
So should we just go and have a look at your silage clamp now then, Rob?
Yeah, it's just round here.
What we're looking for when we come to a farm is to make sure that farmers are complying with the different regulations that we cover. So mainly we're looking at things like the slurry storage, silage clamps, nitrogen planning, and also looking at sort of diffuse pollution issues. So on this particular clamp, when we came to visit, there was a few cracks. So Rob's been busy repairing some of the cracks there just to contain the effluent.
Can you show me what you had to do, Rob, to make good that?
We actually cleaned down all the steel work because it was starting to corrode with the silage, and sealed between the concrete and the seal with black bitumen. On the bottom of the wall, we've put cement because that had all been eaten away by the silage, so there was a danger of the silage undercutting the concrete walls. But now we're aware of it, we can actually keep that on as a regular maintenance.
had a little look at your silage storage. What's next on your checklist as an inspector, Karen?
Well, we also look at the general drainage, sort of the yard drainage within the farms, and it's clean and dirty water separation is quite an issue that we're finding, and farmers often consider the clean water, let's say, to be cleaner than what actually it is. And we noticed that when we came here, there was some contamination in some of the drains that Rob had got here.
Where are the drains then?
Well, so if we look here, this is a typical drain really that we'd find in a farmyard, and it's heavy trafficked with vehicles that come across. It is also closely located to the silage clamp,
and it's just a grid in the floor.
So we can see in there it's got solids in there, so you end up with silage in there, some debris from the cattle. It's just being mindful that if this is a clean drain and it's going to a watercourse, it's to make sure it does maintain clean really and doesn't get contaminated.
But it does look a bit dirty. Does that count as clean?
No, it doesn't, no.
It's one drain that I have to regularly clean out. That mesh will block up. To be honest, I should do it more often, but it's getting in the habit. But having had an inspection, we are very mindful of it now.
I mean, it's been in the public domain that, something like half those farms visited don't meet the regs, would fail an inspection. Is that surprising and worrying?
What we are finding is within the non-compliances, the majority are things like no soil sampling, no nutrient management planning, and sort of clean and dirty water separation can be an issue.
Are you doing your job if it's like half?
There is a lot of farms out there who've never had a visit from the Environment Agency ever. We are trying to see more and more farms. We want to make sure that they are complying with our regulations, and I think working with them, we are building a much better relationship with farms. We're working hard with them in order to make sure that they are on the right track.
And, it's been very publicised, people very unhappy with the water quality generally. Do you think the inspection regime is doing a good enough job? Do you feel like it's fit for purpose and is stopping that contribution to pollution?
I think the visits that we're doing are very positive. We are building those relationships and farmers are communicating with us better. And I think, yes, we are making a difference.
Karen Price ending that report from Rebecca Rooney. Now, we've had an email from listener and honey producer Stephen Orty alerting us to a viral disease which paralyses bees and which is on the increase. Chronic bee paralysis has been in bee populations for many years, but cases are rising in the UK and it's estimated that up to 2% of bees are affected. The disease is not notifiable, so it doesn't have to be reported, and bees can have the virus and not show symptoms. Professor Giles Budge from the University of Newcastle is currently working on this disease, but he left his lab to speak to Anna Hill.
It's a disease which causes shaking symptoms, and it moves over a few days from shaking through to partial paralysis, through to complete paralysis. So once you have complete paralysis, those individual bees will unfortunately die.
And how is it spread?
It can be spread between bees by the bees rubbing up against each other, or it can be spread by fecal-oral transmission. So honeybees spend quite a lot of time sharing food, and the virus can pass from one infected bee to a healthy bee, can really spread around. And I think that's probably one of the features of the disease, is that beekeepers feel that their colony was fine one week, but when they go back the next week, they see these mass die-off of bees. There's a big pile of dead bees there that wasn't there just the week before.
And do we know where it's come from?
So chronic bee paralysis virus has been associated with honeybees for many thousands of years. The symptoms are well described by people like Aristotle. So we know that the disease itself is quite an ancient disease. What we are seeing more frequently in recent years are these outbreaks in colonies.
Is there treatment available that could be used against this virus?
So at the moment, we've been trying to develop some treatments, and we're still in the experimental stage. So at the moment, we don't have particular recommendations apart from some good practice guide, really, about looking after those bees when they die that land on the bottom board or are thrown out the front of the colony. They can actually be incredibly infectious, so it's worth removing those from the apiary. Try to put wider entrances on colonies to help the bees to throw out those dead or moribund bees that are carrying very high levels of the virus. So there are some things that we can tell beekeepers that we've got good evidence for.
Professor Giles Budge. A new 3-year strategy for tackling rural crime across Wales will offer greater protection for people and wildlife in the countryside, according to the Welsh Government. Among the priority areas are tackling dog attacks on livestock, as well as damage to ancient monuments known as heritage crime. Rob Taylor set up the UK's first dedicated rural crime team within a police force in North Wales, and in 2021 was appointed Wales Rural and Wildlife Crime Coordinator. He told Stefan Messenger some of what's been achieved since then.
We split our strategy into 6 areas, and so you look at habitats alone, we've had community payback within the national parks, which is a huge thing that's happened the first time in the UK, where offenders, instead of going to prison, they get community service, and we utilise that work within the national parks, clearing of pathways, litter picking, and making the environment a better place. We're also doing a lot of work with regards to livestock attacks by dogs. So we've got a law going through Parliament, which we've been working on about 12 years. We've just passed the House of Commons on Friday, and it now goes to the House of Lords, so it's making significant progress. But the other big thing as well with that is that we've introduced a scheme in Wales at the moment, and the best way to liken it is to a driver awareness scheme. I can hear people booing already, but what this is about is, instead of people going to court after a livestock attack, is giving them the ability to go on an awareness course for responsible dog ownership. So it's a first. We've trialled it in Wales, and from September we're going to go UK-wide with it. So the feedback we've had from that has been overwhelmingly positive as well. And there's a lot of good stuff going on out there.
And yeah, as recent figures highlight the ongoing challenges, don't they? So NFU Mutual reporting that rural crime claims in Wales increased from £2.4 million in 2023 to £2.8 million in 2024.
Yeah, I think you need to put this in perspective, really, because it is claims. Unfortunately, the NFU Mutual don't provide us with the detailed breakdown of where those are and what they include. Wales alone is only 6% of the claims for the whole of the UK. There's another figure out there as well, is that livestock attacks in Wales have dropped by 64%, from 800,000 to 300,000. So there's significant drops the other way as well.
And in terms of the updates that you're making to this new strategy, there's a focus on heritage crime. How big an issue is that?
We found it's been a big issue over the years. You know, we've had people damaging Offa's Dyke Wall, for example, graffiti on churches or castles, people night hawking, which is using metal detectors on protected sites. And, you know, we want to protect it for future generations.
Rob Taylor. Now, earlier this week, we took Farming Today to the Great Yorkshire Show in Harrogate. It's England's biggest agricultural show, a 4-day gathering of farmers, foodies, countryside and industry organisations, and a lot of livestock. I kicked off our visit by the pig show ring, where some of the youngest farmers were competing for Best Young Handler, watched by one of Yorkshire's most famous farmers, Countryfile TV presenter Matt Baker.
Morning, ladies and gentlemen. Second class of the day, the young handlers judging their...
You've just had a go at this. It's not as easy as it looks, is it?
Oh, it's not. No, these are experts. They may be young, but let me tell you, they're heroes in this world.
Well, we've got the winner here. We've got the winner of the...
We've got 2 winners here, actually.
We've got the winner of the 8 to 12-year-old one, and also the winner here of the...
What age are you?
How old are you?
You're 4.
That's
brilliant.
4. The pigs are bigger than his. So you're the expert handlers. This is Miley Cullington and her little brother Ewan. How difficult is it getting a pig to do what you want it to?
Quite hard.
And tell me about the pig that you were showing. What is it?
She was a British Saddleback and her name was Polly.
We need to walk our stick and board the other side, and we need to turn around.
That's right, and you went all the way over there to the distance, didn't you? Where all those spectators were, and they were clapping, and then you came all the way back again. And I mean, it was amazing. That's where I've learned how to do it, from you. Thank you. But this is, I mean, what a place this is. For me, this is, I don't know, it's a celebration of the whole year, do you know what I mean, of the agricultural year. And I've been coming here since I was their age, to be honest. We used to pack our Land Rover up with our packed lunch, and then by the time we got past the queue to get in, we'd eaten all of that packed lunch. And it's just wonderful. And there's a real sort of see you next year mentality here.
You're what's called a host here this year. What does that mean?
I know, I've gone from being a child, loving every single moment and every corner, to being, I'm just up on stage having a chat and enthusing about this life and what this life has given me, and the world that I've grown up in, and the community. And that's the heartbeat of this place, is the experts, the people, all the generations that come together.
That's Matt Baker. Well, more than 8,500 animals, including livestock, dogs and horses, take part in the Great Yorkshire Show. And there was a special focus this year on one of Yorkshire's finest breeds of sheep, the Wensleydale. Jodie Shadworth is the secretary of the Long Wool Sheep Breeders Association.
They're a long wool breed, one of our largest native breeds. They originate right here in the Yorkshire Dales, but they got their name at the Great Yorkshire Show in 1876, which is when they started having breed classes here. There was this breed of sheep going around. They said, well, you know, there's quite a lot of them. What are they called? And they went, oh, well, they're called mugs. And they went, well, that's not a very good name for sheep. So what do you want to call them? And they got the name Wensleydales and formed their society.
Can you describe what the wool on a good example of one of these sheep should look like?
Oh, I mean, because it comes in long staples, it comes in long locks. When they're a year and a half old, it should be about 40 centimetres, 30 to 40 centimetres long. It should be nearly touching the floor, and it should part evenly from the back in one straight line, going down like a waterfall on each side.
And that's exactly what this particular sheep in front of us at the moment, that's exactly what she looks like. But for a lot of farmers nowadays, the price that you get for wool, it doesn't cover the cost of shearing for most sheep farmers. What about the fleece for these particular sheep? Because we're surrounded in this part of the showground by loads of beautiful textiles and craft work, even an evening gown over there that have all been made from Wensleydale wool. I mean, is the wool worth something?
Wensleydale wool is worth something. So, I mean, it's one of the most expensive wools in the British wool board, which might not mean an awful lot because some breeds are worth, 5 pence, 20 pence a kilo. But these are worth, depending on the year, about £5 a kilo. But then quite a few people will sell it privately to spinners and crafters, and you can get a real premium for that. Some people might be selling their fleeces for 20 to 30 pounds a kilo, which is obviously, an exceptional amount. It's brilliant. That is their value, is their fleece, but we eat them as well. Yeah, they're a fantastically versatile breed.
Jodie Shadworth and her beautiful Wensleydale sheep. Now, there were lots of farmers with plenty to say about politics at the show. The government is carrying out a farming profitability review in England to inform future policy. There's been a call for evidence and practical solutions, and that closed yesterday. Minette Batters, the former National Farmers Union president, is leading the review. I caught up with Rachel Hallos, NFU vice president, who was at the Great Yorkshire Show, and I asked her what kind of practical solutions the profitability review might be talking about.
I think this is where it gets really, really interesting because every single sector is different. I'm a hill farmer, so I'll be expecting different things or looking for different things. Dairy farm will be something different again. Arable are under a huge amount of pressure right now. Horticulture is under a huge amount of pressure right now. So I don't think there are any hard, fast, one bullet is going to solve this. And that's why we as an NFU, we've pulled together all the policy work that we do anyway and that we have been doing, and we'll be submitting that.
Well, Minette Batters has really got her work cut out then, hasn't she?
She has got her work cut out. When we start talking about profitability on farm, there's a whole thing that needs to be done. We talk about the business of the farm itself. The farmers that are the business people, do they need help running that businesses as individuals? Do they need to understand more about their business? And then we go through to the supply chain, understanding what they need to deliver for the supply chain. And I think at the moment, as an industry, we're sort of like, we're in a bit of a conundrum. We're wanting to actually know, what is it that you want from us? What do you expect from us? Farmers are really, really good at working with goalposts. And they're not quite there at the moment, are they?
The latest government figures show that the total income from farming in the UK saw a 26% increase in 2024. I mean, farmers are doing okay, aren't they?
My bank account doesn't say that. That's the reality. Increased overheads, lack of funds coming in, the sudden stop to SFI.
That is the environmental payment scheme that the government has actually closed because it's run out of money. So farmers can't get anything from it, and they won't be able to reapply for it until in the new year.
All those different things, the inheritance tax looming over people's heads, there's a lot of negativity. Listen, I'm a glass half full person. I will try and find the solution to the problems that we face. Not all farmers are as maybe able to do that, and we're here to help them do that.
So you've submitted evidence to this review. What happens next? Do you know what the timescale is?
We don't. We will wait and see. Simple as that. I genuinely think there's a future for agriculture in this country, of course there is, but but we need to make sure that every farmer feels the same way about it.
NFU Vice President Rachel Hallos. And that's all we've time for today. I'm Kaz Graham. The producer is Rebecca Rooney. And Farming Today this week is a BBC Audio Bristol production.